Welcome to the Leadernomics Show. Today we are with IMD Professor of Marketing and Strategy, Dr. Dominique Turpin. Welcome to the show. You've been to Malaysia before, and
Yes.
You've sort of got into this space of being an expert in marketing and strategy. Tell us a bit of a background. How do you get into that space?
A little bit by accident, I must say. I'm originally French, and when I was 15, I didn't know what to study. So one of my uncles said, "You should study business. It can always be useful." So I went to French business school, and then all my friends were going to the US to do an MBA. And I've always learned that when everybody's going in one direction, you should look at the other direction. So,
And you learned that from your uncle?
so I went to Japan. I went to do my PhD in Japan.
Did that require you to learn Japanese?
Yes, and it's a little bit more tricky than to learn any other European language. So I got a scholarship. I stayed in Japan about 6 years. And by the way, I have a small anecdote. I did my PhD on high-tech entrepreneurs. And one day I was in Nagoya and I met some bunch of American entrepreneurs. There was a young guy with curly hair, glasses, geek. He gave me his card. I would have never invested a single cent on this guy. I still have his card. He said William H. Gate.
William H. Gate?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
But as I tell you, I would have never invested my money at that time on this character.
If today you'll be a billionaire. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I did my doctoral thesis actually on this. I was actually partly financed by our competitor today in SEAD, and it was about who are going to be the new Honda, the new Sony. And in my thesis, I picked up 3 entrepreneurs, and one of them is Mr. Son, who is today probably one of the richest men in. So I miss it twice. That's why I'm an academician and not a businessman.
Well, at least got the opportunity. So let's talk a little bit about this marketing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a strategic weapon that can define organizations, right?
Well, marketing has been, is, and always be. How do you create value for a customer? Any business needs to provide some value to the customer. Otherwise, why would you buy these particular products and service? So, this is what we have been trying to explain to executive. Although, to me, marketing is so much good common sense. But we still have to push this idea that you create value not by asking your customers what they want, because typically they don't know today what they want, and the last answer you want to hear is price. So we say, okay, well, can you think about how do you make the life of your customer easier, better, cheaper? And if you can do the 3 at a time, then you are in good business.
And why is it there's such a pushback? I mean, what is the
No,
issue?
it's not that there is a pushback, but I think it's perceived as a bit too
Soft.
Too soft, yes, and kind of, it's good common sense. And, marketing is a bit like golf. Golf, you have a ball, you have a stick, and you have to put this ball into a hole. It looks easy on paper. Marketing is easy on paper. When somebody said, you have to create value for a customer, yes, sure, of course.
Yep.
But to do it is difficult. So it's the execution that is the most challenging. I think coming up with a marketing strategy, which is defining the type of customer, the product, the geographies, and the way, the business model, is relatively easy. But to do it, to execute it, and do that on the long term is more difficult. And I think the other challenge that marketers face in the past, which is less true today, is that it was difficult to justify the financial impact of your decision. Because when you were running a big corporate campaign in the street of Kiel, or how do you measure the return on investment? It's not so obvious. Today, with digital marketing, you can measure the numbers of clicks, exactly who reads what and so on. So you have more, I would say, precise information about the customer or the prospect you are going after. And as a result of that, I think it's a great time for marketers, because digital technology enables you to better justify your budget and your actions.
Talk us through digital marketing. How is that changing and evolving, and what's happening in that space?
Well, it's a very, I would say, fashionable topic. And in my long career as a professor, I've seen a lot of hot topics, fashionable topics come and go, from quality management when I joined to ISO and
Six Sigma,
Six Sigma and all this.
Yep.
So digital marketing to me is a toolbox of tools, because we see many executives coming to IMD and say, hey, Everybody's talking about AI, virtual reality, big data. How do I use that? I have a lot of data on my customer. How do I use that? And to me, this is the wrong question. The right question is, okay, what value do we want to bring to the customer? How can we beat our competitors? By using these tools. So, in a way, the digital tools, whether it's social media or applications, or are a tool to achieve your goal, which is to add value to the customer.
So always the outcome is more important than the tool in itself.
Absolutely. So to me, digital marketing are tools that enable you to, in a way, beat your competitors and provide a better service to your customers.
I mean, you walk around Asia, places like China, which has gone so digital in so many ways. I mean, what's happening? I mean, how important is for organizations to really be in this whole digital game?
Well, I think that, when you see what's happening in the world, typically digitalization also happen where the markets are fairly big in terms of scale. So, coming from Switzerland, where we have like 7 million inhabitants, like 1/3 of KL, you don't have the economies of scale. On top of that, we speak 4 different languages, and so when you see what's happening in the United States, where you have English as a common language, and a large population either speaking English or Chinese or Spanish in Latin America, this is where you see the most advanced technology taking place. I don't expect to have so many, new insight coming from smaller countries. Smaller countries like, Scandinavia or Switzerland have other qualities, but not, the economies of scale that
the Chinas and the Indians can do. But the smaller companies are competing, right? I mean, you've got the Swedens, the
but the thing is that I think as a marketer, you also need to scout the world to find out where are the most interesting innovation. And it's not so easy because today Apple must be running something like 9 million applications. How are you going to find out that this one is really what you need for you? And by the way, the other big challenge that we see with digital marketing is a gap in generation. Because all these guys who are developing these new applications and see the use are typically 19 years old, 20 years old. Well, if you look at the average age of a chief marketing officer for a major multinational, it's probably 65. So I'm not saying that the 55 are obsolete, but you don't think the same way. Okay. So you need to, and this is what also we try to do at IMD, is to teach these people. It's more important to understand the right question to ask than to have all the answers to your question.
Absolutely. We're going to take a short break right now. We'll be right back here with the Leronomic Show. Welcome back. We're with Professor Dominique from IMD. We were talking about this engaging conversation on marketing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's happening around the world is this whole trend to disrupt. Yeah. Whether it's business models, whether it's marketing strategies, whether it's anything, it's just let's be disruptive. Talk us through disruption and some of the brands or some of the examples that you see are successfully doing this. And
so, what interests me are the names that you still don't know about. So, if I mention name like Hallotop or Lemonade, or that's probably names that you haven't heard of yet. But I think that these are, the next one. And typically, disruptors are people who wants to, create more value for the customer at a cheaper price or cost. So, one example would be these glasses that I bought in Paris. I don't know if you wear glasses, but typically, so how much did you pay for your last pair of glasses?
Quite a bit. 200-300 US, I think.
200 US. I got this one for 10 euros. They are customized, 10 euros in 10 minutes. So when you pay 100, 200, or even $1,000, I mean, the margin in this business are just
phenomenal. Yeah.
So that's.
And this is a Warby Parker or no?
No. Well, the thing is that of course you don't have a choice 20 different.
Just online,
it's not branded, but I went physically or online. Yeah. So. When you have a guy who makes glasses for $10 in 10 minutes, and you say he's probably still making a little bit of margin. Yeah. Imagine the margin there is in this business. So disruptors typically are going to attack this type of businesses where margins are big, or where you can bypass the intermediary, or
you can scale fast.
Or just solve a very, very innocent problem. So I've been always amazed by how simple the ideas of these disruptors are. You know, I recently interviewed, for example, the founder of GoPro. And you say, how did you come up with this idea? Because, you know, Sony, Nikon, Canon have been in business for long. And he said, yeah, but you see, they are kind of becoming very, very complex. And he said, the only thing I did was having this insight to turn the camera 180 degrees and build on the ego of people who want to have their picture on Instagram, Facebook, and so on. And the rest is history. And when you meet these entrepreneurs, I'm really always surprised by how simple the idea is. And it's about very often, solving a problem that they have been facing. This is an entrepreneur. This is a difference between, you know, somebody in the street who faces a problem and goes home and is very frustrated, and somebody who is going to take action.
Is that part of the problem with the big boys, like the banks, for example, to you know, versus the fintechs, and that there's a mindset block to be able to be simple and to be able to uncomplexify?
Well, the thing is that typically it's not unique, I would say, to the banks, and it's
across all industry.
Typical of a growth, all the big organizations. And I studied actually, you know, the reaction from the big corporation to these disruptors, and what I found is that they got good ideas also in the big companies, but the problem is a culture. In order to do things, you need to have your decision rubber stamp, and so the lack of agility, the lack of speed, the problem also that this company face, which is always cut cost, because you know we are listed on this doesn't help.
The quarterly earnings. And
exactly,
all that stuff.
And the fact that in most corporations, I mean, despite what you hear from the senior executive, failure is still a stigma. In your career, in your CV. So that's a dilemma. Now, of course, the other part of the side of the coin is that we always talk about the successful company. Because, you know, out of, for one Microsoft or one Uber, there are probably 10,000 companies that fail. And secondly, it's not because the company is successful today that it will be successful tomorrow. I mean, you know, you may remember in Search of Excellence and Good to Great and all the companies.
Look at Nokia and Motorola. And
exactly.
Just so, the telco industry.
You know, the question is, you know, when will be Apple falling in the same trap as Motorola, Nokia, and the others?
Right, right. And so, what should leaders be thinking of, you know, as they, you know, for example, if I'm an organization that's thinking of scaling up, you know, and what should I be looking for? What I be thinking about? What should I be focusing on?
Well, I think the first thing is that you need to surround yourself with talent and not be shy of surrounding yourself with people who are better than you are. I think, you know, we are talking about Bill Gates, and it's probably one of the biggest qualities he has. He knows how to surround himself with guys who are a very good caliber. So the human factor will always make the big difference. Yes, you need to think strategic. Yes, you need to think simple. I mean, the other big killer these days is the complexity that you know, all companies are putting in place with processes and so on. I mean, this is what strikes us when we look at the small entrepreneurs and the disruptors, is the simplicity of the idea and the simplicity of the business model. So, again, after the fact, when you look at that, you say, well, yes, we should do the same. But if you have a big organization, again, I mean, you need to have different you know, validation, and this is what is killing a lot of great innovation in big companies.
We're going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back here on the Leaderonomics Show. Welcome back to the Leaderonomics Show. Now, Dominique, every Leaderonomics Show we have the Thinkonomics Challenge, where we subject our guests to quick-fire, rapid questions, you know, based on our Thinkonomics game. So I'm gonna just set the clock out very quickly, as fast as you can. You know, answer these questions. If you were made the Prime Minister or President of your country, what actions would you take to transform your country?
I would say I would try to tackle the issue of inequality, because that's a big problem today. The rich are getting richer, the poor are poorer, and I think at one point there will be an explosion.
Okay. Is it possible for a society to be overdeveloped?
I would say it depends. That's always the right answer
it's
in marketing.
what good academicians would say. It depends, right?
It depends. No, overdeveloped. I think there are so many problems to be solved that I think we're still a long way to be there.
Okay.
But some countries like the United States, I think to some extent, are overdeveloped in the sense that they are creating more problems than they are solving right now.
And you create more issues around the world.
Yeah.
What qualities in you do you wish to share and teach others to harness?
Curiosity. I'm a curious guy. When you're a prof, you have to teach. Before you teach, you have to learn. Before you learn, you have to be curious.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's I'm curious about many
you
things.
have mentioned this curiosity is important not just for, it's also important for leaders, right? To be curious, to see what's happening in
Well,
other
not only
industries.
leaders, but I would say, executive in general. I'm always struck as a professor that, typically executive know their industry, or they know 1, 2, 3 industries, but very often they are not curious to see what's going on in other industries that are completely different from them. Although many industries face the same issue, which is, the human factor, the execution of strategy and things like that. So, be curious.
Okay, very good. And now, how should a company really give back to the community?
So there are different ways to give back to the community, and I think you can give back by giving job, by giving back a part of your profit and so on. But if profit is the only goal you have in life as an entrepreneur, you won't go very far.
True. And Bill Gates is, I guess, a good example of really,
absolutely.
With the foundation. Would the world be better off or worse off with a time machine?
Probably not, but I wish I could experiment that.
Oh, okay. Now, I'll give you a last question. What future development do you look forward to with most anticipation?
The fact that we could be able to, cure disease. I mean, the good news about medicine is that I think we are going to go more and more to a proactive medicine. Mm-hmm. Today you go to see the doctor because you have something, and more, I would say, individualized medicine. I think that's great great for the future.
Yeah, that predictive medicine, preventive predictive medicine. So let's you met a lot of leaders, and obviously you didn't invest in Bill Gates, nor Song, but I'm sure throughout the years you've learned some big insights from many of these people you've interacted with. What are some of these insights that you can share with us, in terms of good leadership and lessons that you can take from these guys?
The one who really impressed me was the founder of IKEA. Very humble man. And even Bill Gates, I think, is a fairly humble man. So despite the fact that this guy have a lot of power, a lot of money, etc., the fact that they care about the other people and that they have some humility to contribute to society, I think is a fantastic gift.
Yeah, and that really lasting legacy that's
Correct.
Beyond the company that they built and so on and so forth. How about good companies that you look at, and what are some of those, in terms of the marketing, in terms of being that agent of change in maybe it's disruption, maybe it's marketing.
Well, there are many, but they are not. There are many, but the most famous are not necessarily the best example. I know some fairly small company that you have never heard of in Switzerland or in Europe, but are, I think, doing a very good job in precisely trying to solve a big problem for humanity. I remember one of these guys who asked me a question. He said, "Do you want to be a billionaire?" He said, "It's so easy." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, solve one problem for 1 billion people." And I found that very inspiring.
That's actually a good insight. We were talking a little bit about Southeast Asia, Malaysia, and some of the economies here. We've seen, big companies mushroom, or global companies mushroom from different places in the world. Mm-hmm. But, Southeast Asian companies tend to struggle a bit to become a global player. Why is that? And is there something that we should be thinking differently, or what should we be doing in Southeast Asia?
Well, I mean, Asia or Southeast Asia is a geographic name. There is no, I would say, it's like Europe. I mean, Europe does not exist. It's a melting pot of countries and people. Sure. However, I think that there's still a strong Confucian influence, whether you like it or not. I mean, the Chinese have been contributing a lot to managing the trade in the region, etc. So the Confucian values maybe not inspiring enough self-confidence. I think this is what is making many Asians, the lack of self-confidence. Although today, you cannot just rest and look at your market as being just Malaysia or just Thailand.
You know, look at the world as your playground.
However, I think the Thai are very not terribly confident to come and work here. And Malay, I don't know if they are confident. And you have all strong cultures also. So building more self-confidence would be, I think, one of the priority that.
How about the marketing angle? Because I mean, I've seen a lot of great ideas here in Malaysia, but the same ideas in Silicon Valley. You get the 500 million and so on. Why is it that?
But I would say Silicon Valley is a kind of an exception, different animal. But you see, as I told you before, I'm very much interested in looking at who are going to be the new global brand. I'm very struck by the fact that you see Latin American brands, for example, coming to Malaysia. You think about Kidzania from Mexico, Natura from Brazil, Havaianas, which make the flip-flop. I mean, so you see, and the global game of branding, I think, is indeed moving more from west to east. I'm still missing a numbers of, Southeast Asian brands who have, I would say, the ambition to become really global. So we have a grab of this world or
Asia
or AirAsia, but they are still limiting themselves to a region.
Space, yeah.
Although regional brands, conquering, before you conquer the world, you have to conquer the region and your own domestic market. But I'm still missing a numbers of brand I could give to my student or my executive in Europe and say, hey, look at this brand in Malaysia, look at this brand in Singapore or in Thailand. There are a few, but they are still missing, I would say, the ambition to become truly regional, truly global, like Havaianas, Flip Flop, or Kidzania, for example.
And so, what advice would you give if you were addressing a group of CEOs and they were, you could advise them on some nuggets of wisdom in terms of marketing, in terms of growing their businesses, scaling their business, right? What sort of advice would you impart to them?
But I would say that, again, maybe when, in marketing we used to say to our executive, you need to understand your customer needs and want. Today, if you ask customers what they need, they don't know what they need. I mean, nobody sent an email to Steve Jobs to say, I want an iPhone, an iTunes, an iPad. Yeah. So you need to go through the customer experience and understand what are the customer pain. So customer pain is a fantastic opportunity to provide value. And then have the ambition to take this problem and solve them on a much more bigger scale. That, to me, is a kind of starting point for many entrepreneurs in Malaysia and Southeast Asia.
And also current leaders of bigger companies,
of course,
to really understand the customer pain and how to solve that. Right? Okay. And let's say, if you had to give advice to a young person who's just maybe graduated from university, coming out, going into this world and trying to make a difference in this world, right? Mm-hmm. What sort of advice would you impart to this young person to say, as you start your career, what should you be thinking about?
But I think first you have to dare. Dare to take risk. What is interesting is that when you look at the statistic, the data, typically entrepreneurs start a business before the age of 40. Why? Because when you're 40, you're typically married with 2 children, and then you are less inclined to take risks. So if you are just graduate from university, you're 28, you're not married, go for it. I mean, at least try your chance, and you have nothing to lose.
But is there? I read some reports that say many entrepreneurs who do it post 40 are the ones, or late 30s, I guess, are the ones that ultimately are successful because of the experience that they've gained.
That's true.
And the insights.
From the data I've looked, it's more around 50.
Yeah.
Because when you are 50, the kids are grown up, etc. So, it's true. You have more experience.
So it's really any age, right? I mean, at any point in time to really.
So, but a real entrepreneur does not know his age. I mean, he would start at 70 or even at 22.
Like Colonel Sanders.
Exactly.
KFC. So, as we close out, right? Just a quick question. In terms of habits, are there certain habits that you have, or you think successful leaders need to have, or need to be thinking? I mean, I know you mentioned curiosity as a character that we have, but are there others that is important for us, especially in line to seeing the world in a different light? Marketing, a lot of it is positioning and understanding how to connect dots and finding that opportunity. But are there certain habits that we need to inculcate to ensure that we're able to do that?
I would say, two more. One is to try to be humble as much as possible. I know that it's not always easy, especially if you are very successful. And the third is, communication. Communication is key. we tend as leaders to under-communicate. We think that people know what we are doing, understand what we say, etc. My experience as when I was running IMD is that we always under-communicate. So don't hesitate to communicate, over-communicate until the people are sick of your message.
Dominique, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on your show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.